The navy blue tie. Now, for the guy that's really out there to sell the product, I use red ones. That's a powerful tie. This is this one, and this is for Linda Reiner, I think. These are all then, of course, I get into really, and this is almost a pain, I guess. In fact, I had a little girl quilt a walking for me that I have in the show, and when she saw this today, she said, "Oh, that needs to be quilted." And you can't really put this in when you take this down. We could invite you to come up, but I mean, to pass it along and look at how I have kind of tied those large shapes together by spritzing it with alcohol, and that gives this effect of all these little shapes that are there. And this is the way that begins. And I'm going to get to this pretty soon and show you. That we just had color float on the canvas just like this one itself when it started. Obviously this was stretched on my large stretcher. And this was done for a parade house out on the west side of town. When they built the little condos out there, one of the living rooms was done in peach. And I did this to go up in a cathedral ceiling. And I'm not going to take that down. You can come up later and see how I have actually gone around and brought out some images. And this is called a spring garden. And I have a purple one that's called Royal Garden. This was all done with resist, which you're going to see me do in a minute. And this one is another one that's done with the tricks. I have another one started here that I'll paint on. It's drawn very precisely. As I said, I don't see as well as I used to, so I don't like to do this as well. But that's what we're going to start with tonight. And I'm going to put a pattern under here. That's for the lady who sits on Iris, whoever that is. And I have the pattern under there where I can see it. And the silk gets stretched in this fashion. And it's done with push pins, which are stainless steel and won't rust. And I start in the corner. Sometimes the silk is a little larger than the stretcher, as it is in this case, because the company has sent me 16 by 60 instead of 14 by 60. And so I have to adjust some way. If I would leave this down touching the edge of the frame, I would end up with a border that I don't want. So what I do is push the silk clear to the top of the pin, so it is not resting on the lid, it's up above. And if you look closer, you can see under the silk. I get all four corners, and if any of you are painters and stretch canvas, you know how this has to be done. We go from the corners to the sides, stretching it tightly. A lot of the work that I'm going to be working on has the silk already stretched to save us time, but I did want you to see how I do this part of the process as well. I have a handout for you later on, but for you guys taking notes, go ahead and take notes anyway, because I might say something that's not on the handout. And then again, I might say something you want to take notes on either. Usually the pins need to be about 2.5 inches apart. And we stretch it gradually so that it's evenly stretched. A little on this end, a little on that end. Now we have what's called resist that we put on here to preserve the images so that we know where we're going to be painting. And also, that prevents the dye from running into another area. It contains the dye. and it won't go beyond that. It's a water-based resist, and the dye does not dissolve it, of course, but at the end process, when we steam this, the steam doesn't dissolve it either, but then we wash the silk, and that washes that resist out, so you don't have that black leather. The long one that I'm working on here has very heavy resist around the flowers, partly because I wanted them to have white edges. And as long as you put the resist on a white garment or white piece, you're bound to have white lines. And that's why there are no white lines on the black thread that you pass them around, because I already had the color on there, as I have on this piece. And so when I put the resist on, it was going on to a color rather than on plain white. Follow me? A couple of things that were planned for tonight. I have my granddaughter here. She's going to model for me to show you how to tie some real fancy knots with scarves. I have several good ideas. Plus, I have a couple of books with me that are available. I'm not sure where I got mine. I think maybe the Walls bookstore. Anyway, you can find books that will tell you. She really likes scarves. It's a good idea to have one. And one of them that I have is so neat because you can look at it while you're folding. It stands up. And half the book is with just knots, and the other half of the book is with clips, where you use a clip for the scarf. And I have one of those books too.
Doris, I think they have a video they did at the library also on scarf tying.
Okay. The book is used in such a way that you can stand it on your dresser and look at it while you're tying the scarf. Now, I probably won't put resist on all of this because it's going to take too long, but I will show you how to resist it. And another thing that I make that I'm going to pass around today after a while is some note cards, which I just love, and send them to only very, very special people. None of my children even Okay, now I have that stretched pretty tight, almost like a drum head. And the resist is applied with an applicator. It's a little bottle and has a little applicator on the end of it. And I understand that the resist comes in black now, but I've never used any of it. It's pretty nice to have. Because sometimes you want a black outline around things. It just depends on what you're trying to set up there. I squeeze this and get the air out, and then I squeeze it to a tie. And I will follow this as closely as I can. And you have to get it on heavy enough that it really seals the cloth. Now a little petal. And iron petals are sort of later. I think it real well right here. And be very careful if there aren't any gaps, though. This must always come together in time. Come around. Bonnie says I can't see where they are. So I didn't come close. It would certainly be all right if you come closer. I was going to explain to you the first time I took a my turn. I was at Jackson County Artist and a girl by the name of from Will and did a little demo, and she let us all paint. And the second that crash hit that stuff, I said, I'm just going to have to do it. Bonnie and I had taken a stained glass class in Hammond some years ago, and I said, oh, I didn't need it more. So I did more than stained glass. But the minute I touched that silk with that dye, I knew that I was going to look at it. And it just very much that way. See, my pattern's down some far. Normally, I have a piece of wood that supports it. There's a little place under there. But I didn't bring it with me because I didn't think I was going to use a pattern under here. I thought it was going to be on the square. And I reversed my idea.
So do you have a pattern under this one?
There's a pattern in here. This also has a border, which I can like. One thing about this, she lets your resist dry, and then the next day you look at it, and you can see whether you have any little coatings or not. That's what we call them, little gates or doorways. And if you do this different clothes, it sounds pretty far. We were kind of improvised here and come up with something totally different, more fun than what we're doing. I'm not one to stay by the rules. It's fun to be
I'm not in the studio yet, that are mindfulness.
well, not really. I am defining her studios together. Mine is real rusty. Well, my painting was played with this. Notice, guys, how I was careful to be sure and get past that when you touch it back. If I go too fast, I will launch your
You draw out all your own patterns.
Yeah. Here's an example. Oh, there's the one from that one. The first year that I made some stars, we had our Christmas opening at our shop, and I made 76. I had 76 to sell within 2 weeks, and sold all of them. But I sort of saturated the market, I guess. I don't have that many files. I can see why. Somebody wants to say, but I butterflies and roses and all that. I'm sorry, I didn't stir up the cat. That's all right. Yes, she did. Well, I don't know the first thing I want to do is somebody else just well, I brought the family, and I did it. It would be a matter of figuring out the color, so we put other things. And I've got some other things going right now. So I'll put a little more resist and then we'll change. I don't want to stop at this point. Okay. Well, I have to put my name on it. And I just signed my Stars Doris. Is that what, zero? Is that a thing? Star person zero? Yeah, obviously. Chairs. Now this is the pattern that I made. Now this. That's awfully important to you to see because I'm going to be looking at the pattern again anyway. And then this is one for the tulip scarf that's somewhere. just at the end, instead of that, I didn't put it all over. All right, now I'm going to show you how I make a tie. That seems like a good spot. This is my tie rack, and it's got new nails special for tonight, and a new monofilament lacing. You should have seen what was on there before. It was all rusty and it was just a mess. And the rust comes partly because we use salt on the special treatment. We're going to see how that goes. Anyway, I was going to tell you on with my story. On with my story. I took this had this opportunity to paint one time on this silk, and then we had a workshop out at Riverside Park, what you call it? Brookside, that's it, thank you. Riverside Park, and there we had a half-day workshop. I never will forget one of the ladies there, the wind blew her black dye over all of her scarf. Really made it pretty, but she was so upset. That wasn't what she wanted. That wasn't what she had in mind, and she was so upset. And we all told her, it was so good with that spot on it, but didn't convince her. So I started on the back side of this tie, and normally I have this made in Taiwan sticker off. Most of my silk comes from China. This is from China. From Thai silk, which is an address that I have to do Jane asked me what the hammer is for. Jane asked what the hammer is for. That's all the stretching the tie. Then, believe me, I get so much dye on me. Not when I'm making things, but when I'm cleaning up after. I take the gloves off and I get finished and I start putting dye away and I have more on my hands and more on the gloves. These are latex, I find they're way better than the rubber gloves. I think probably we want to do burgundy. Burgundy and the navy, maybe. We do like that. Jane, we just came off the clothes, not spilling. I see that. Yeah. Dripping on the side. Pretty loose. You need all the stuff around you, tissue and all kinds of things. I haven't had enough to tell you all that. Tank full of oil, I think it's wicked. Oh no, let's do this. Hey, let's do this in brown and black with a conservative guy, and we put just a little bit of red on it. Your black, red with brown. You have to be flexible if you're going to paint silk. It's part of the game. Now, here I have all kinds of little foam brushes. And on the handle, it tells you what color it is. In most cases. There's gold, black, brown. Heads up. First stroke. This is really difficult. Hard. So can you move the box? Oh, Bonnie. She probably next to the box. Sorry, I didn't take that That's probably enough to put on. This has to be done very rapidly because the treatment that I'm going to put on this
has to be put on while it's wet. So we work real fast, and I'm working on a dry piece of fabric. Now, sometimes you'll wet the fabric first. It depends on what you're doing. If you want colors to flow together more, watercolor like, then you wet it first. Softly. A little water. Then we turn it over very quickly.
Can we see it?
Well,
See it before you look at it? No?
not yet. It'll be a surprise. You want to see what the salt is. Probably we want to have red and burgundy in there. I have to think about that while I'm putting this on.
What kind of paint is that?
This is a special permanent dye that is very special for stuff. Where do we have the do that? Way down here? The pretty part. This is red. This is alcohol. The alcohol will make the color less bright, so I have to be very careful when using it. If it gets a little drier, then it will work a little better. We'll see what happens. Okay, this is the way it looks at this point. But it'll look different after it dries. Have some plastic on the floor back here. So whenever you have that interest in this college, don't get worried. Last time I gave a demonstration, I was telling Jane it was for a group in Michigan City, and I had 35 from the Michigan City Art League, and they asked me if I'd do a workshop, and so I had 28 or so sign up for the workshop, but I could only take 15 at a time, so I took the first 15, and we had a wonderful workshop. It was just really great. Okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. Did that. I don't want to leave anything out. This we're going to do in the first one. And it's going to look like a little line. Close the curtain. This is all stretch. And as I explained to you before, you can stretch any size silk you want to, as long as you have the wood the right way. should be really good. We're going to use cacti and orange. And yellow and brown. That's this. And it fits the table pretty well. I don't have to worry about dripping on the floor. But we do put it on the floor. And again, I have to work very rapidly. No particular pattern, just be sure I get under the nails. These foam brushes work very, very well.
What color is that?
This is called Redwood Brown. It's a new color I just acquired. I have addresses and things to give people that will charge you back for all this stuff. I'm dragging the table here. Probably can see.
Have you always used the sponge brushes
For large surfaces, wherever I have a large area, yes.
Otherwise, you use regular brushes?
When I'm working on tight areas, really close, then I use the little brushes, which I'll show you soon. And these little sandwich bags work really well. Now, I don't like to wash the brush because each time I do, I need a little bit dye. It's a new orange that I got. It's a very pretty color too. There's something under there. Gee, that gives me an idea. Maybe one could do stuff with, remember when we do watercolors sometimes, we use saran wrap to get a nice pattern. Maybe we could do that with dye. You leave it dry and take it off and you've got a real interesting pattern. If I were ordering, I would have that all sitting out for really. Oh, we have to make room for some green. Hardly ever spill orange, it's always black or red. Like a really dark. Rich, blue. You say cat or cat eyes? Well, it depends on what color I'm using. I'm ready to learn how to use it. That can be cat eyes. Now, I'm really worried about getting this repeated here and there, and not the shape that I'm putting it in. Because now, ooh, what's kind of hard. Now, it's just my table salt. You can use sea salt, which is a little more coarse, and that will give you a little larger spot. Did you notice some of the things that pass by the little tiny spots like it's been food? Well, that was from the salt. And since that was drying in 2 areas, I'm going to keep a little shot of water that will start activating a little bit more. Just a little more. Right, and 2. first. Or something. Have orange road. Maybe if I did this brown. Probably did. Yeah. That's what we're trying to get. Visually. Not literally. Then we will put some alcohol on it. And alcohol will cause the dye to go away from its, where the salt pulls the color to it, the alcohol causes it to go away. And so that's where you get, kind of these spots that you can see where you are. Any of these circles, that's alcohol. These little viney-looking things look like fish and so forth. Which, by the way, when I ironed that last night, I got such a kick out of it because I found all kinds of interesting things in it. Even a papyrus and a backpack. All kinds of stuff. And from those images is how I make my stationery, which I'll show you. But anyway, the alcohol is applied later, not like the salt. The salt has to go on while it's wet. The alcohol will burn when it's a bit dry. Okay. Well, they've had some running in it. That'll enhance it. That's perfect. One thing about it, if you do so, just let it happen, because if you get all hung up on having to have it exact, probably it will fail. And if you sort of let it have its way with you, you'll get some real interesting results. The hanging that's up at Plymouth right now, I won the award on several, 2 years ago, or in the Best in Fighters. And it is, it has a purple border all the way around. And it was done for a parade house up in Valparaiso. And the living room was all done in off-white and purple pillows. And this was made for the foyer, which you could see from the living room. But the young couple that bought the house had 4 children and couldn't afford to have hanging, so I still own it. But it's coming down in pricing too.
The Wednesday conferences.
Oh, okay. Just started, like the silk that I have under the table in front of me. The color was just floated on kind of haphazardly, although I did think about where I wanted to pistol and stamen and put some yellow there so I could identify that later. And the only way you can do this particular technique is to go darker, which is to go black in my case, because you're covering other colors up. And in this case, you will not have white lines because you're putting the resist on a color. And here I've left some white, and so I will have some white lines here. These flowers told me what they wanted to be after I got the alcohol on, but then I already got the color on. So they decided they wanted to be a hybrid iris. So I thought, well, if it's going to be a hybrid iris, you're going to have some white on it somewhere. So that's where the white. But anyway, we'll pull it off one way or another. But did you notice the fun stuff that's going on here, all these little specks? Well, that alcohol was used on there primarily to break up the large spaces and to unify the whole thing. There was a lot of red and a lot of green kind of battling each other. But as soon as I put the alcohol on and changed the shapes within these larger shapes, then it unified it. Made it work together. The other thing I meant to tell you a little earlier was, when I first took this workshop, we were given this size container of dye. There were 6 of these in a package, and these are available in kits if you want to start to build a project. And I think there might be an address on the paper. And of course, I liked it so well that I ordered some this size. Well, those ran out pretty soon, so I ordered this. Now I ordered it for it. And I put them in the butter containers, but I'm always careful never to pour this back into the bottle because they can be contaminated and they'll get thick and moldy. So I found that out the hard way too. So you have to be really careful about that. But anyway, that's the way I've regulated it up. Now they have some dyes that don't have to be steamed. And the lady who published this book is one that I talk to periodically from Ivy Silk. And she says, Doris, why don't you get rid of all that old dye you have and get some that you don't have to steam? And I'm thinking, well, if I look at my cover, I have about $300 worth of dye that I'm going to throw away and then invest another $400 in new ones, no way. So I'll continue using these and go ahead with the steaming, which I'm going to show you after a while how we go about doing that. But at this point, I'm going to bring up at least the outline of these flowers so that you can see how the black is off. If you didn't get a chance to look at the scarf that I put the salt on, you'll want to do that after a while. I think right now, before I do this, I'll put the alcohol on here. But I don't think that's going to be too much in the way of tanning. Can you all see me over there? I can. I'm pouring it all with my hand.
Would you empty the coffee pot?
Yellow bothers me. I was trying to carry it. There goes. Real. Wow. Full gold is red, but I'll lower its intensity a little bit. Pulling it down on the alcohol. You always have to go into experiment. And if you're in the selling business, you don't worry about it. If somebody doesn't like it, somebody else will. One thing about these latex gloves, they're a little easier to get on than these other ones. I think that's some chopping on. Now, someone asked me about brushing or using your home brush. When I'm up against a real tight area where I really want to protect it, not swap around, then I use brush. There's a warm black that I can get and a cool black. This is warm black, but I'm noticing on this one, that it's drying almost like a gray. It's a new guy that I have, and I might have liked my cool black better, so, here we go. So I'm painting with the green now, and my leaves are going to have some red on them, and they're going to have some green on them, because that's where the color was spread onto the silk. And there's nothing wrong with that. It'll tie it together. But where the green and red come together, we're okay. But what about when the red comes against another bit of red? Well, I have to change the value of one or the other, either the petal of the flower or the red that's on the leaf, so that it separates. I can see that this is going to be a shade experience. Usually you can correct your mistakes. It's kind of like watercolor. It's a challenge to figure out how you can use that mistake to its advantage. Once in a while I can, but like I said, it is a challenge. And that's what life is all about. And I've told this story so many times, some of you have already heard it, but I had a painting teacher once that said that a good painter is not identified by how well she paints, but how well she corrects her mistakes. So that's the way it is. If you can use your mistakes to an advantage. Can you all see the canvas or the silk? Or am I up too high? I'll tilt it up and look at it. Wherever there's a little opening, and there's this, the dye will run into that little spot that you don't want it to be in. But if you are real quick and put a little water on it, it will push it back out a little bit. So in that case, it wasn't an opening, it was that slip. So you go quick and push it. Now I might want to leave that edge of that flower white, and the sunlight shining on it, or I might want to paint it and then color later to see what that's white or not. Sometimes it gets so big I have a hard time reaching, but I won't turn it around for this. I hope you're getting my best side of it.
Always.
It's going to be a leaf. In fact, this is a fold. This sort of has to be done fast. You can't stop in the middle of a spot. You have to go on. Like I would paint all of this and stop here where it goes to the edge of the cloth. Otherwise, you get a streak. Although when I use alcohol, it kind of takes care of that. It makes another little spot. So. I'll paint just a little while and then I'll show you something else.
Can people come up with questions?
Yes, if you'd like to come closer, feel free to. If you get somebody to wait in, come in. Oh, yeah. I'll just take this one chart. Here's what I've done so far. I started around the iris. And if you get a chance to look at it closer after a while, you'll see my drawing on there with this, and you can see where I'm painting. Now, when I get into a spot in here where there's red against red, and I want to identify this part of the flower from the side one, I will just change that just a little bit. I'll add a little more red one place or the other, and that will change the value enough so that you can separate one petal from another.
And on that one, you're just using alcohol and salt?
Pardon?
You're just using alcohol and salt on that?
That's already had salt and alcohol.
Oh,
So now it's just going to be straight out.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we have a treat. Abby has agreed to model for me to show you how to tie some scars because she has a date and has to get out of here. And if you saw her boyfriend, you'd understand why. It's so cute. Anyway, so it's Abby. She just loves doing it. Anyway, this is the little book I was telling you about, and it does actually stand up like this. And you can put it on your dresser and turn the pages. And one side of the book is all with clips, And then you turn the book over, and the other side is tied. I don't have that listed on your handout. You might want to get that later. And then we have another one called Sensational Stars. Okay, Abby, I have a whole series here of this all ornament with a small square. We'll use numbers. In the first place, I'm going to fix the needed scarf so that you don't, this over, and this over, and this over, and you just tie this in several knots. This is a simple one.
Ooh, beautiful.
Now we did one of the moms. Oh, here we go. This is easy and it's great. Have it in the middle.
Ooh.
Pull it through the loop. I would have thought she'd grow up to be so silly. No, I can't. Oops, there. Pull it. Then pull it like this. Tie it into a square knot. You have sort of a square top. Square here and here. Tie this square knot. And then back there. So you have this back. Good. Then one, you have a pretty good size scarf, probably this size. And a triangle over your back. You can pull it through the buttonhole. And you put this under your coat. And then you pull this through so that your buttons are covered with the scarf. That makes sense. Then you can have two of these. Tie them on the shoulders, one in the front and one in the back. And you wear a belt with it. You have different colors. I think one of my favorites is this one. You have it in the middle, tie it with a rubber band. Corners, turn it wrong side out, and corners, pretty that we don't care whether it's high business or what. Now I'm going to show you one with the clipper. I'm going to just go. Start right down here. Start this where you want. You get the size where you want. That part of the Anyway, I think that's enough. Happened together. And I don't know that I'll ever make any more that size. While I'm over at this table, this is a piece of scrap silk that came from one of the coats that was made. And from those scraps, I make my silk stationery. And my assistants are going to pass these up the aisle, one to each end person, and you can pass them out. And you'll notice that there's note cards, and they all have titles, and they're one of a kind. Use a lot of water. Now this design is meant to be a little more realistic, so I'm doing some shading on it like I would on a watercolor, with a little darkness in the center going off the edge. And these edges will all be white. So then I go a little darker next to it and pull that out. I don't want to have just green leaves, so I added some red to my green. And now I'm going back and add a little bit of green to this so that it doesn't bite too badly. And I'm thinking that I might use alcohol on this as well, and that will help to unify if the green is biting the paint. I don't know if that's a technical term, but it seems to be biting. I use water along with this. And, Jane, you want to go down, you know, I always go by the brush on it. It's pretty good. Now I don't want my green to be real bright, and this is pretty dark, so I've added a little water to my brush, and I'm going to get part of the leaf that's under the flower dark, because it would be sort of in the shadow. Then the part of the leaf that's out and away from the flower, I've added a little tiny bit of yellow. You all see that? And this one would probably be yellow because it's on top. And this one is probably dark because it's underneath that. And although the white line will separate one from the other, thanks, Jane. It would still enhance it to have that color there. And on the stem, I like a little green, but I like to have a little pink on there as well. The fuchsia that I have is wicked. It is the brightest color. That's the awful color. After I decided to use it, I put it on. It was too late. So I have to incorporate it somewhere. Like I said, it's always a challenge to make a mistake and have to figure out what to do. Now, I'm not going to worry about this flowing out past resist there because when I put black on it, it'll take care of it. But if I put black on without closing that little gap, the black will bleed right in onto the stem. So I have to, when this dries, I have to close that spot. I'll paint a little bit more on the things and then I'll put some black. What I'm doing is kind of blending these colors as I go. And believe it or not, I can dip from one color to the other without it mixing. It sort of mixes on the brush instead of on the pot. A nice sunny spot on this leaf. Turn down. Not interested very much. And I noticed I've been putting a little tiny bit of pink on fire. And have it before. Anybody in here a painter? One. Anybody else paint?
Yeah, where I wish I had more time.
What do you do on it? The doves that I wanted. Dark and flower.
You use pudding for your pudding.
These leaves are coming off this flower. I'm not sure what kind of flowers these are. I'm not sure who the word that flowers. They might even have roses. What do these little stems Nice thing about this, I can start working with black over here if I want to. And I can put the black on first, but can any of you figure out what the reasoning would be behind waiting and putting the black on last after the color? If you have a gap and it leaks out in the spot and you still want it, then you can catch it and close it and put the black on. Put the black first and mix in petals that you don't want it on. Put the black one on. I'll just paint over to here. The problem is, I hate to even compare this to painting by numbers. That's pretty crazy. But you do get anxious. Look like when you get that next area down, it's thin down. Isn't that the way with painting by numbers? You want to see what happens? You get all 34 or something. Sometimes I design in such a way that the stems are clear out to the edge, and I don't use them all the same color, like this could be gray and this could be black. And you can see the advantage of that. See at this point how much prettier it is with color variation, because it's darker, because it's wet. Think about this being dark and that gray, and this gray and this black. It sort of takes your eye right through the paint and through this color. And that's wonderful thing about this too, you can be pretty inventive. And if you aren't sure of yourself in the beginning, there are pattern books. I have to share with you my experience with the author of this book. She owns a company that I get my supplies from, and I called her about something that I needed dyes, I guess, and that was the first year that I was painting myself. And she said, are you painting to sell? And I said, yes, I've sold 76 in 3 weeks. And she said, what book are you using? And I said, I'm not using the book. And she says, you're not? You're painting without a book? And I said, yeah, it was a watercolorist first. And I just found that it behaves a lot like watercolor. And if alcohol and salt will do that to watercolor, it ought to do it to silk dye. And she was quite amazed that I hadn't had any instructions. Thank you very much. So she said, well, I have my book. So I ordered the first one, and later I ordered the second one. And it was fun to find that I was doing some things right. Not everything. There were a lot of things in there that I hadn't experienced with. And it says in there that some painters or soap painters use nothing but Q-tips. And it gives them looser edges. It's more painful rather than being tight like this. So it depends on what you want to say with your work. But like I said, with Solomon watercolor, you get interesting effects. Same way with this. I'm working on a set of dishes, otherwise I get back to this tomorrow. I have a deadline on those and I don't want to sew. I think the dark is much prettier. I might even do a second coat and do that too. I wanted to have a little design of that and you could sprinkle some salt, but I think probably there's enough design with the flowers without interrupting them with salt. This is one of the world's greatest places to stop. That's where we stop. Come on. This is a quick book of silk painting. Diane Tuckman is the lady that author, and Jan Janis. There are also periodicals that come out. One is called Spin, and this is fairly new. They just had the very first silk painting congress out in Maryland. Oh, this was actually new, I guess. And the silkworm is another one that comes out. Pieces to tell you what's going on. And the book has just all kinds of wonderful stuff. A lot of wonderful colored photographs by different artists. Here's one, for example, that this flower was made by using alcohol and dipping a Q-tip in and dragging it and letting up on it. You get these petals. And so it would tell you a lot. Breaks it down into different techniques. Uses salt, uses alcohol, and wax uses this, and all of those things. And garments. This one is Creative Silk Painting by the same two authors, Diane Tuckman and Jan Janis. And I have 3 brochures that she sent me, if anyone's interested. 3 exquisite and informative silk painting books. It's about the books. It goes I think the first one I enjoyed more than this. It's a little bit of repetition. But it does show silk painting and ways that you can use your silk and so those are 2 very good books. We're talking about the creative aspect. So this is a piece that I did a couple of years ago. And it shows how you can
go a little further with your creativity. When I did this, I realized that I had too many horizontal lines. This is called Mother Earth. Can you see the figure in it? Mother Earth. I realized there were far too many horizontal lines, so I decided that I'm going to embroider or else applique some trees through here to break up those lines. Jane, you want to hold one end of this morning? And this has been quilted, so it's really nice. But the figure lies here. Here. And this is her hair. But the purple and the gold are complementary colors for almost. And for that reason, it just fights. And this is all you see is this purple streak across there. You lose this entirely. So I think by going to black through there, I can pull it off. But that's the nice thing about this. Are you a silk painter or are you an artist? And when you begin to figure out how you can correct your mistakes, you're on the way. I've done it. Okay, let's see what else we need to do here. I want to show you how to wrap a piece of silk for steaming. I have one dry, so I'm going to wrap an old one. And hopefully, when you get your hand out, you go through it, and it will help you to recollect all of these things that I told you, and believe every word. I always like to teach beginners because they never know if I'm telling the truth. It'll tell you in the handout the silk has to be wrapped in newsprint. Now they're changing their methods of printing a newspaper, and they're going to mess up my whole life because they don't have newsprint anymore, like this, like a roll. I suppose there's someplace I can find it, like in the silk dealer will charge you a fortune. Out of the way, I need no more space. Now, when you wrap your silk for steaming, you don't dare have any of the silk touch itself, because the touches is going to leave. So I cut this longer than the scarf and wider than the scarf. You want it at least 4 inches. 2.5 degrees, something like that. And I usually can steam 3 at a time in my steamer. And I start this for the height that I want the roll to be. I'm going to tear off my tape first. Now we're pretending this hasn't been stitched. You can fold it in the end. You can roll it like that. Roll. Now you're going to say to yourself, how in the world did she wrap that big piece of silk? How in the world did she get that in a canner like that? Arsenic. Well, I have an extension I put on that canner, which is a 5-gallon cherry can. And I stick it in the center of the canner and stick the silk up in there and put aluminum foil around it so the steam can't get out. There's the way to start the next thing. This is my steamer. My good husband made a rack to go inside. I put about 2 inches of water and stack 2 or 3 of these around. That one's a little tall. I probably should wrap it a little tighter. Then I put a piece of
foil over those, a hood, to prevent condensation from the lid getting on the silk, because we don't want the silk to get wet, we just want it to get hot, steam hot. Lid goes on, and it steams for 1 hour. Then when I take it out, I let it cool. And once it's cool, I unwrap it. And I wash it in the sink. Nice clean spot. You don't want to get any oil off your hands or anything on it. Wash it in cold water. Maybe a couple tablespoons full of vinegar. Some people say yes, some say it doesn't matter. And after you get it washed, wet, and rinsed really well, and if you have an intense color like this, I rinse this 3 times. It doesn't seem to lower the intensity of the color, but you don't want to leave any color in there that will rub off, especially on a tie. Man wears that tie on a white shirt and gets purple on it. It's very bothersome. So you want to be sure to rinse that off a lot. Then after it's rinsed, you roll it up in a towel and wring out some of the moisture, but not all of it. I like it pretty wet when I iron. And I don't have the iron on real low. It's amazing what the silk can take when you iron it really well, and then it's ready to wear. And if you want to wash it after you've worn it a few times, then wash it in woolite, or you can dry it, either one. Now, do you have any questions at this point? Anybody? We'll pass out handouts. Then I have done a piece of silk. It has little shapes on it. Ooh, look what the alcohol says. I've drawn some shapes on here with resist. And any of you who want to, I have 3 brushes. You can come up 3 at a time and paint any color in that square that you want to put. And we'll end up with a hodgepodge that's going to look beautiful. In the meantime, while you're thinking about whether you want to do that, we'll pass out the handouts. This is your supply list and procedure. It's a little redundant because my other handout says something about the procedure too. The care of silk, supply sources, and publications. Now pass this one out. This one is just all silk painting. Have around 10 minutes. Where you got to go? Yes.
On the white columns, how do you do those?
All right, that was resisted first. I put the resist on that before I put the color on. So it's reversed, the white is reversed. You can see that there are lines around it. And then I painted gray and I painted the edge of the top so it's faded. I think it's a little stiff right here, but that was to be a sidewalk, but the orange decided to want to go there, so it bothers me a little bit, but it's not enough to throw it away or anything. I had someone ask me the other day if I made silk pillows. The doctor was in India, so they use a lot of pillows, and he had seen my quilted wall paintings. I said, yes, okay. So, that'd be fun. Just having nice pictures. So, a curtain wall like this. But I'm thinking about it, and if you did want to frame them, it'd be a good idea to use foam core and stretch it tightly over the foam core and lace it in the back and then just set it right in the frame. And a glass probably. Anybody else? Yes?
For reason why do you use bottled water?
Bottled water?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I've only been doing that lately. I used my own water out of the well for a long time until I was ironing it, and I got thinking maybe that could have an effect on myself later. So I've gone to the pure water. Good question. Okay, who wants to start? Come on, bring it up.
Benjamin. Yeah. You're on candid camera.